The hum of the engines filled the cabin, steady and low. Carter Ellison, billionaire with a reputation carved from steel, settled into his first-class seat, papers spread across the tray. He wore his usual armor, navy suit, silver cufflinks, expression unreadable. It was meant to be a routine trip across the country. Then his gaze drifted toward the aisle, catching sight of a woman he had not seen in 6 years. Vanessa Morgan, his ex-wife, walked in quietly, holding a small child against her shoulder. The boy's dark curls framed a face Carter couldn't look away from. He froze. The child's eyes, gray, sharp, haunting, mirrored his own. The plane seemed smaller, the air heavier. Passengers shuffled, unaware of the storm rising in him. Carter's hand tightened around the pen in his grip. Vanessa avoided his stare, but fate had already forced them back into the same cabin with no place to hide. Vanessa eased into her seat across the aisle, her movements careful, almost rehearsed. She wore no jewelry, no traces of the luxury she once lived in. Just a plain blouse, faded jeans, and shoes that had seen better days. The boy, Jameson, clutched a worn teddy bear, his small fingers wrapped tight around Vanessa's sleeve. Carter's chest constricted as he studied the child's profile, the same cheekbones, the same subtle tilt of the head he'd seen in the mirror since boyhood. He told himself it couldn't be, yet every detail whispered otherwise. Vanessa met his eyes for the first time. Her expression was guarded, layered with defiance and exhaustion. No words were exchanged, but Carter felt them pressed between them, unspoken accusations, unfinished wars, and a truth neither could keep buried much longer. The flight had only just begun, but already the past was clawing back into the present.
The seatbelt sign flickered off, and Carter rose to stretch his shoulders. He hadn't planned to say anything, but as fate would have it, Jameson toddled into the aisle, steadying himself on the armrest beside him. Carter looked down, and the boy's gray eyes looked back. Time stopped. Jameson tilted his head curiously. "Sir, are you a pilot?" His innocent voice cut through Carter's composure like a blade. Vanessa rushed forward, scooping him up, her voice tense. "Jameson, don't bother the man." Carter didn't move, didn't breathe. "It's fine," he said quietly, though his gaze never left the boy's face. Vanessa's grip tightened. Passengers looked on, oblivious to the weight of what had just passed. For the first time in years, Carter's perfectly controlled life teetered. He had questions, but one truth screamed louder than all. That child was his blood. Dinner service began, silver trays and glassware glinting under cabin lights. Carter barely touched his food. Every glance toward Vanessa was met with the same defensive silence. She fed Jameson quietly, her hands trembling just enough to reveal nerves she tried to hide. Carter leaned closer across the aisle, his voice low. "Why didn't you tell me?" Vanessa's jaw tightened. "This isn't the place." Carter's breath hitched, rage and hurt colliding inside him. He had built empires, crushed rivals, but in this moment he was powerless, staring at the son he had been denied. Jameson hummed softly, tapping a spoon against his plate, oblivious to the storm between his parents. Around them, passengers laughed, flight attendants moved with ease, but in their corner of the sky, silence cut sharper than any insult. Vanessa kept her eyes on her son. Carter kept his on both of them.
Hours passed, but Carter found no rest. Every movement of Jameson, every smile, every curious glance tore at the walls he had built around his heart. Memories clawed back, nights with Vanessa, dreams of a family they'd never built, arguments that left them broken. Now, across the aisle was proof that the story had never ended. Vanessa eventually leaned back, exhaustion pulling at her features. Jameson curled into her, asleep, his small hand resting against her chest. Carter's chest ached. This was the life he had wanted once, denied and hidden away. He reached for a glass of water, his hand shaking. For a man who never allowed weakness, this moment was unbearable. He had lost years he could never reclaim, and yet, here they were, trapped in the same sky, forced to face what silence and pride had buried for far too long. The plane jolted sharply, turbulence rattling trays and sending glasses clattering. Passengers gasped as the cabin lights flickered. Vanessa instinctively shielded Jameson, her arms wrapping around him tight. Carter's hand gripped the armrest, his eyes darting to them. Fear laced the air, but beneath it, something unspoken rose between them. Carter stood, crossing the aisle despite the rocking cabin. He steadied Vanessa's tray, his hand brushing hers. "He's safe," Carter said firmly, eyes locked on hers. Vanessa swallowed hard, holding her son closer. Don't pretend you care now," she whispered, but her voice trembled. The turbulence eased, the cabin steadied, but the moment lingered. For the first time since the divorce, Carter wasn't the billionaire or the enemy. He was simply a man watching his family nearly slip from his grasp. And in Vanessa's tear-brimmed eyes, he saw something fragile he hadn't seen in years: doubt.
From the row behind, Judith, an elderly woman with sharp eyes and a kind smile, leaned forward. "Excuse me, young man," she said to Carter softly. "You look like him." Carter turned, startled. Judith smiled knowingly. "That boy has your eyes. Don't waste your flight pretending otherwise." Vanessa stiffened, cheeks flushing. "Please, ma'am, stay out of this." Judith only patted Vanessa's arm gently. "Secrets don't protect children. They only make them question why they weren't worth the truth." Carter's throat tightened, words stuck in his chest. Judith leaned back, content with the silence she had left behind. Vanessa avoided Carter's stare, her shoulders rigid, but Jameson stirred in her arms, whispering in his sleep, "Daddy!" The word fell into the aisle like a stone dropped in water, rippling through everything Carter thought he knew. Vanessa's face crumpled, her secret unraveling with a single word. Carter sat frozen, his chest hollow. That word, "Daddy," echoed louder than the engines. Vanessa stroked Jameson's hair, her face pale. "He doesn't know," she whispered, eyes darting away. "I told him stories, made up names, but children, they see things." Carter's voice broke. "Why, Vanessa? Why hide him from me?" Her lips pressed thin, holding back tears. "Because you were never ready. You were too consumed with power, with empire. I couldn't raise him in that world." Carter leaned forward, his voice sharp but quiet. "You had no right." Passengers around them laughed at a movie, unaware of the storm brewing inches away. Vanessa's grip tightened around Jameson, her defiance crumbling under the weight of his gaze. "I did what I had to," she whispered, though her voice betrayed the guilt. And for the first time, Carter realized this wasn't just betrayal, it was fear.
Just as silence settled, a figure approached from the front of the cabin. Derek Langston, Carter's former rival and ruthless business adversary, smirked as he spotted Vanessa. "Well, if it isn't Vanessa Morgan," he drawled. Vanessa's face went pale, her arms instinctively shielding Jameson. Carter rose instantly, eyes narrowing. "Langston, sit down." Derek's grin widened. "So it's true. You hid her away. And this little one," he leaned slightly, eyeing Jameson with cruel curiosity. "Well, that explains everything." Vanessa's heart pounded. Carter stepped between them, his voice low and lethal. "Stay away from them." The cabin had grown quiet, passengers sensing tension. Derek chuckled darkly. "Secrets always surface, Ellison. You should know that." Then he walked on, leaving destruction in his wake. Vanessa's shoulders shook, tears threatening to spill. For the first time, Carter wasn't angry at her. He was furious at the man who dared to expose them. Carter sat back down, his jaw tight. Vanessa leaned closer, whispering fiercely, You don't understand. Derek knew. He always knew. That's why I left. Carter's heart pounded. You left me because of him? Vanessa shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. I left because I couldn't protect Jameson if you two were at war. Derek threatened me, threatened our son. Carter's breath caught. The truth burned hotter than betrayal. It wasn't just pride or power that had cost him 6 years. It was fear. Vanessa wiped her cheek with trembling fingers. I thought I was saving him. Carter looked at Jameson, then at Vanessa, and felt a shift. The fight wasn't between him and her anymore. It was between all of them and Derek. For the first time in years, they weren't enemies sitting across an aisle. They were parents, cornered by a common foe.
The cabin's quiet hum seemed to fade under the weight of Carter's rage. He leaned closer to Vanessa, his words low, almost a growl. You should have told me. I could have protected you both. Vanessa's eyes were wet, but her jaw was strong. Protected me? Carter, you were at war with men like Derek. Your empire was bullets, not safety nets. I needed peace for Jameson, not more enemies. Carter inhaled sharply, gripping the armrest so tightly his knuckles whitened. Across the aisle, Jameson stirred, yawning softly, still blissfully unaware of the storm around him. Carter's heart clenched. He had lost 6 years not to her spite, but to her desperation. Yet anger and love tangled so tightly in his chest he could barely breathe. And in that suffocating silence, Carter Ellison knew the fight was only beginning. A stewardess approached, her polite smile faltering as she sensed the tension. Is everything all right here? Vanessa quickly nodded, her voice composed but tight. We're fine. Carter forced a smile, dismissive. Just a family disagreement. The word family slipped out before he could stop it. Vanessa's shoulders stiffened. The stewardess lingered for a beat, then moved on. Carter exhaled, staring at Vanessa with intensity. Family, he repeated softly, his eyes falling to Jameson. Vanessa pressed her lips together, unwilling to admit what he already knew. Outside the window, clouds rolled like waves, heavy and endless. The hum of the engines felt more like a drumbeat, pushing Carter toward a decision he couldn't delay. He had lived his life commanding boardrooms, directing armies of lawyers, bending markets to his will. Yet here, across one narrow aisle, was the one battle he couldn't afford to lose.
Judith, the older woman behind them, leaned forward once more. Her voice was calm but carried weight. Young man, if you want to know the truth, stop glaring and start listening. Vanessa turned sharply. Please, stay out of this. Judith's eyes softened. Child, I raised 3 sons. Secrets broke all of them. Don't let yours suffer the same fate. Carter met Judith's gaze, something unspoken passing between them. Vanessa trembled, clutching Jameson closer. Judith leaned back, satisfied. The words hung heavy in the air, undeniable and sharp. Jameson stirred in his sleep again, murmuring softly, "Daddy." The sound cracked Carter's chest wide open. Vanessa wiped at her face, silent tears rolling. Judith's wise wisdom had pierced the wall both of them had built. And for the first time, Carter didn't just want answers. He wanted his son to know him. Truly know him. Vanessa reached into her bag, her hands trembling. She pulled out a small envelope, yellowed at the edges. She hesitated before sliding it across the aisle. Carter stared at it, then slowly opened it. Inside was a birth certificate. His eyes locked on the name, Jameson Ellison Morgan. His surname burned into the page like fire. Carter's breath caught. His name. Proof. Vanessa's voice cracked. I was going to tell you, eventually, but then Derek found out and I couldn't risk it. Carter's hands shook as he held the document, a mix of anger, grief, and overwhelming relief. 6 years lost, hidden under silence and fear. He traced the letters of his son's name with his thumb. Vanessa's eyes pleaded across the aisle, but Carter couldn't speak. For the first time in years, the mighty billionaire felt small, reduced to ink, paper, and stolen time.
From the front of the cabin, Derek Langston's cold smile lingered as he watched. He leaned toward a fellow passenger, his voice just loud enough to carry. Secrets travel faster than planes. Imagine the headlines. Vanessa paled, her knuckles tightening around Jameson's small hand. Carter's jaw set hard. He stood, walking toward Derek with controlled fury. "One word out of you, Langston, and you'll regret it." Derek smirked. "You think money scares me? This is bigger than your empire. This is blood, and blood scandals sell." The nearby passengers exchanged nervous glances, sensing something larger than a business feud unfolding. Vanessa closed her eyes, praying Jameson wouldn't wake into the chaos. Carter leaned close to Derek, his voice a razor. "This isn't about money anymore. This is about my son." Derek's smirk faltered, just enough for Carter to know the game had shifted. Back in her seat, Vanessa trembled. Carter returned, his face still hard as stone. Vanessa whispered fiercely, "You don't understand. Derek isn't just a rival. He's dangerous. He said he'd destroy Jameson if I ever told you." Carter froze, staring at her. "Destroy? A child?" Vanessa's eyes brimmed with tears. "He wanted to end your legacy, Carter. What better way than to erase your heir?" Carter's chest tightened, rage flooding every vein. He had fought wars over companies, but this was his blood, his flesh, his child. Jameson stirred again, curling closer into Vanessa's chest. Carter's hand twitched, aching to reach for him. Vanessa whispered, "That's why I ran. That's why I stayed silent." Carter's heart broke and burned all at once. He finally understood. Her betrayal wasn't born of cruelty. It was born of fear. Fear of a man who knew no limits. The cabin grew unbearably tense, silence heavier than the roar of the engines. Vanessa leaned back, staring at the ceiling, her lips trembling with words unsaid. Carter sat rigid, his mind burning with rage and regret. Judith watched quietly from behind, her wise eyes taking in the storm without comment. Jameson, still asleep, breathed softly, innocence wrapped in every rise and fall of his chest. The plane soared higher, but inside, everything felt like it was sinking. Carter had built skyscrapers, crushed opponents, and commanded empires, yet he had never felt this powerless. He wanted to protect his son, to protect Vanessa, but the years of distance stretched like an ocean between them. The hum of the engines masked his whisper, meant only for himself. Never again. It wasn't a plea, it was a vow to reclaim what was stolen. The captain's voice broke the tension. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent. Please fasten your seatbelts." Carter's chest heaved as he glanced across the aisle. Vanessa cradled Jameson, her lips brushing the boy's hair. Derek smirked from the front, already pulling out his phone, ready to strike once they landed. Carter's heart pounded. He knew what was coming. Scandal, exposure, chaos. He leaned toward Vanessa. "When we land, don't leave my side." Vanessa's eyes widened, fear flickering across her face. "Carter," he cut her off. "No more running, no more hiding. He's mine, and I will protect him." Vanessa's tears spilled, but she nodded faintly. The seatbelt sign glowed, the plane tilting toward the city lights below. Outside, the world waited. Inside, a father's fury and a mother's fear forged a fragile alliance that would decide everything.
The plane touched down with a jolt, tires screeching against the runway. Passengers clapped softly, relieved, unaware of the storm that was about to break loose. Carter stood the moment the seatbelt light dimmed, his body shielding Vanessa and Jameson as Derek rose with his phone. "Smile for the press, Ellison," Derek sneered. Cameras already flashed through the airport windows, gossip sharks waiting for blood. Carter's eyes narrowed. He extended his hand to Vanessa. "Come." For a heartbeat, she hesitated, then placed her hand in his. Together they stepped into the aisle, Jameson clinging to her shoulder. Derek followed, his grin predatory. But Carter didn't flinch. For the first time in years, they walked as a family, even if the world was ready to tear them apart. The glass doors slid open, and the world roared, hungry for the secret that could no longer be hidden. Flashes exploded like lightning, voices crashing like thunder. "Mr. Ellison, who is the boy? Miss Morgan, is this your child? Is he the heir to Ellison Enterprises?" Carter shielded Vanessa and Jameson, jaw clenched. Reporters shoved microphones toward them, chaos erupting in the arrival hall. Derek stood smugly at the edge, already feeding whispers to a journalist. Vanessa's face paled, panic threatening to swallow her whole. Carter lifted his hand sharply. "Enough!" His voice boomed across the hall, silencing the crowd for a moment. He glanced at Vanessa, then at Jameson. His chest swelled with something deeper than fear, resolve. "This is my son," he declared. Gasps echoed, cameras clicked wildly. Vanessa's tears spilled freely. Derek's smirk collapsed into fury. And for the first time, Carter Ellison's empire wasn't measured in billions, but in a single truth spoken before the world.
The declaration spread like fire. By the time Carter reached his car, the internet was ablaze. Billionaire reveals secret son. Stock analysts speculated, journalists dissected, and board members called nonstop. Vanessa sat in the back seat, pale and trembling, Jameson asleep against her chest. Carter sat beside her, his phone buzzing endlessly. He ignored it. "It's begun," Vanessa whispered, her voice hollow. Carter reached over, placing a hand gently over hers. "Let them talk. Let them scream. He's mine, Vanessa. That's all that matters now." She blinked at him, torn between anger and relief. For years, she had carried the burden alone. Now the world carried it with her. Outside, headlines screamed betrayal and scandal. Inside, silence settled. For the first time in years, they were in the same car, with the same son, bound by a truth no storm could erase. The next morning, Carter entered his boardroom, tension suffocating the air. Executives sat stiff, papers scattered with headlines about his son. Robert Chambers, his longtime advisor, spoke coldly. "This revelation threatens everything. Investors demand answers." Carter stood tall, his voice firm. "The boy is mine. That is the only answer they need." Robert's eyes narrowed. "Personal weakness destroys empires. This child changes perception." Carter slammed his hand on the table, startling the room. "Then let it. I won't deny him." Silence followed, heavy and charged. For the first time, Carter wasn't defending numbers or strategy. He was defending blood. Vanessa sat quietly in the back, watching the man she once loved stand not as a billionaire, but as a father. And in that moment, something shifted in her heart. For the first time, she began to believe he meant it.
Later that evening, Vanessa opened her apartment door to find Judith standing there, a basket of fruit in hand. "I thought you could use this," she said warmly. Vanessa hesitated, then stepped aside. Judith set the basket down, her eyes falling on Jameson playing quietly with blocks. "He's beautiful," she whispered. Vanessa's throat tightened. Judith turned to her. "You were brave to protect him, but now you must be braver still, to let his father protect him too." Vanessa's eyes welled with tears. "How can I trust him?" Judith's voice was soft, but firm. "Because trust isn't given, it's built. And sometimes it begins with one step forward, even when your knees shake. Vanessa glanced toward Jameson, then back at Judith. For the first time, the walls around her heart cracked, and in that fragile space, hope flickered. Across the city, Derek Langston prepared his counterattack. News outlets buzzed with stories he had planted. Secret love child, billionaire's hidden scandal, empire in jeopardy. He leaned back in his chair, satisfaction curling his lips. "Let him choke on his truth," Derek muttered. His assistant hesitated. "But sir, public sentiment. Many seem to admire him for claiming the boy." Derek's smile faltered, but only for a second. Admiration fades, scandal doesn't. He poured himself a drink, savoring the chaos he had unleashed. Yet deep down, unease gnawed at him. For the first time, Carter hadn't hidden, hadn't run. He had claimed his son before the world. And Derek knew that kind of courage could ignite a fire stronger than any scandal. But he pushed the thought aside, clinging to the belief that power still belonged to him. Vanessa sat on her couch, Jameson asleep in her lap. Carter stood near the window, staring out at the city lights. She broke the silence. "Why now? Why fight for him now when you let me go before?" Carter turned slowly, his face lined with regret. "Because I didn't know. And because I was a fool then. I thought power was everything. But the moment I saw him, nothing else mattered." Vanessa's eyes searched his, wary and wounded. "And when the pressure comes, when the world demands you choose?" Carter stepped closer, kneeling before her. "I already chose. I chose him. And if I have to burn everything else to the ground, I will." Tears slid down Vanessa's cheeks. She wanted to believe him, but belief was a fragile thing. Still, in his eyes, for the first time, she saw truth instead of ambition. The next morning, Jameson crawled onto Carter's lap as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He looked up with wide gray eyes. "Are you my daddy?" The question pierced deeper than any blade. Carter's throat tightened, his vision blurring. He stroked the boy's hair gently. "Yes, Jameson, I am." The child smiled softly, resting his head against Carter's chest. Vanessa watched from the doorway, her heart aching. For years she had carried this truth alone, shielding Jameson from pain. Now, the truth was out, and it didn't break him, it healed. Carter closed his eyes, holding his son close. For the first time in years, he felt whole. And in that fragile embrace, Vanessa saw a glimpse of the man she once loved. The man who could be more than a billionaire. He could be a father. Carter walked into a press conference the next day, cameras flashing. He stood tall, Vanessa and Jameson seated quietly in the front row. He cleared his throat. "Yes, I am a father. Yes, this is my son. And no, I will not apologize for it. My empire was built on power, but my legacy will be built on him." Reporters erupted with questions, flashes blinding, but Carter didn't flinch. He had faced hostile takeovers and betrayals, but none of them compared to the strength it took to claim his child before the world. Vanessa felt her heart swell with pride, though fears still lingered. Derek watched from afar, seething, realizing that Carter had turned scandal into strength. And for the first time, Derek feared he might lose, not just to Carter's empire, but to Carter's truth. Late that night, Derek cornered Carter in the parking garage, his voice venomous. "You think this makes you noble? You think they'll forget the scandal?" Carter turned, his gaze icy. "They'll forget you first." Derek sneered, stepping closer. "You'll lose everything." Carter's jaw tightened. "I already lost everything once, when I lost my son. Now I have him back, and there's nothing you can take from me." Derek's fists clenched, his rage boiling, but Carter didn't move, didn't flinch. The silence stretched, heavier than any threat. Finally, Derek spat a curse and stormed away, his empire of lies unraveling in the face of something he could never understand: love. Carter exhaled slowly, his chest heavy, but steady. For the first time, he realized he wasn't fighting for power anymore. He was fighting for something far greater. Days later, Vanessa stood on her balcony, the city lights shimmering like stars. Carter joined her quietly, Jameson asleep inside. "I don't know if I can trust this, Carter," she whispered. "I don't know if I can trust us." Carter's voice was low, steady. "Then don't trust us. Trust him. Trust the little boy inside who deserves both of us." Vanessa's tears slipped free. She turned to face him, her heart breaking and healing all at once. "If you hurt him, I will never forgive you." Carter nodded. "Then I won't." She studied his face, seeing not the billionaire, but the father. For the first time in years, she let the walls fall. She stepped into his arms, not for herself, but for the boy asleep inside. And in that embrace, a family began to heal. Weeks later, the three of them boarded another flight, this time together. Jameson sat between them, laughing as he pressed buttons on the seat screen. Carter glanced at Vanessa, their hands brushing briefly. The tension had not vanished, but something stronger had taken root. Truth. Jameson leaned against his father's shoulder, whispering, "Don't leave again." Carter kissed his son's hair, his voice breaking. "Never." Outside the window, clouds stretched endlessly, the horizon glowing with morning light. Passengers passed by, some whispering, some staring, but none of it mattered. Carter Ellison, the man who once measured his worth in billions, now measured it in moments. And this moment, sitting beside his son and the woman he had once lost, was worth more than any empire. For the first time in years, he wasn't flying alone. He was finally going home.